So the Attorney General's office is hiring the Attorney General's former firm, Eglett Prince, to handle the opioid lawsuits. They've been involved with the other cities and such as well. I see black, so we're going to start again. We need that. Okay. All right, 3, 2, 1. The Attorney General's former law firm is, take 3, 3, 2, 1. Well, the Attorney General's office is hiring his former law firm, Eglett Prince, to handle the opioid lawsuits for the state. They're involved with the county, the cities as well down here, and several cities around the state. Maria Teresa, I think I'll just start with you. Some people had said this smells a little bit funny. Do you see any conflict or concerns?
Yeah, you can see that the optics are bad, but if you look into it, he had the Attorney General, Ford, recuse himself early in January, and this was actually a 9-person committee, I believe, that picked Eglett Prince. And, you know, the optics are bad, but it's a small community that we have here in Nevada, and, you know, there has been on both sides this type of conflict of interest optics that looks really bad. It happened in 2017 with the recalls, where Hutchinson was the lawyer for the recalls, and that looked bad. But, you know, it's just what it is. It's a matter of, it's just a very tiny community of firms and people that are, and companies that are just involved in this sort of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's about the issue. So I hope they do a good job.
Chuck, what do you think? I mean, this is the firm you would think of probably if you're talking about going after big dollar settlements. So maybe not a surprise, but what are the optics like to you?
Yeah, well, perception is reality. I have to agree. I mean, it does look bad, but beyond that, you mentioned, let's talk about the issue itself. And I just have a problem with the lawsuit in and of itself. I mean, we're going after pharmaceutical companies because they have deep pockets. And the real problem that we have with opioids isn't from pharmaceutical companies. It's from either the illegal market, where the opioids are completely unrestricted and you don't know what you're getting. And I mean, that's the real problem. And you've got some doctors who may be overprescribing that are a problem with it, and yet they're suing the pharmaceutical companies simply for no reason other than they have the deep pockets. And so I think the lawsuits themselves are unfortunate. There's as good a chance as any that it will go through. We've seen huge jury verdicts against big tobacco before, and the Dr. Desai thing where nurses had mishandled the needles, yet they sued the manufacturer and won. And that was an Eglett case. So I can understand why they went with Eglett on that. But I mean, this is going to cost us eventually. It's going to be higher drug prices or higher medical expenses. It's these lawsuits that are really out of control, and I wish we'd look at that.
We've seen some effort the past couple of sessions to try to go after some of those other problems, diversion, doctors overprescribing, trying to fix that balance. I would imagine from your point of view, this is just trying to go up and down the chain, trying to find a solution wherever one is available.
Yeah, and it's something that does need to be done, because I agree with you. There are lots of other problems that are just making the situation even worse, which is, you know, the market that is either the black market, and, you know, some doctors that are in fact prescribing people too much, and people are getting hooked, unfortunately, and when they can't anymore, they go into the black market and they get addicted. It's a big, serious problem that has been years in the making, and suddenly we need to address it and we need to figure it out, and it's about time we do that. I have in my family, I had someone that went through that and unfortunately went down the wrong path and died out of an overdose. It's something that I want them to figure out how we can fix all of these problems, because people are suffering.
You talk about, Chuck, and respond to that if you want, but I was just going to say, you talk about also the idea that somehow maybe it's going to come back in the pocketbooks if prices go up, something like that, and that's where we also see then the legislature has been trying to tackle prices essentially as well. So is this a cycle that doesn't end?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, because I am no defender of big pharma by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they've done some things that are really, really bad, that are costing us all a lot of money that it shouldn't be. Primarily the way they abuse our patent system. You know, they get a patent for, say, 20 years on a new drug that they've developed, and then as the patent reaches its end, they'll change the coating, or they'll change the color, or they'll change the dosage, and they extend their patent, keeping the generic version out of the system. I mean, that's the real problem with Big Pharma. And so I'm not a defender of Big Pharma on this. But I do want to talk about, I read a report yesterday that someone from the Cato Institute put out 2 weeks ago that talked about the prescribing. I guess the government has put clamps on how much a doctor can prescribe to a patient. And if the patient determines that that's not enough, then they have to go to the black market. Now they don't know what dosage they're getting. They don't know if it's laced with fentanyl. They don't know. So the government has helped create this very problem, and now we're looking at government and a lawsuit to try to fix the problem, and I just suspect it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Let's talk a little bit about maybe some gamesmanship that we've been seeing in Washington. So over the issue of plutonium that we have been seeing here and the shipments that came last year, Catherine Cortez Masto, who's now our senior senator, has been working to hold up nominations for posts that Secretary Perry would like to see filled. So they've come to an agreement that over the next couple of years they're going to start moving it elsewhere. Is this something that you believe the Department of Energy has any motivation to do? Do you think they're going to stick to their word and actually move it?
Look, I know that, just seeing the actual plutonium that ended up in Nevada just shows that you can't really trust them as far as you can throw them. But I think that getting this in writing and getting this deal that our senator was able to get was good at the end of the day, and we've got to hold them to it. And that's what she's trying to do with this gamesmanship you mentioned. And that's a good thing. We need to continue doing that. And this is no means the end of it. This is, I don't think we can actually trust them. And that's why they're trying to say, we got to keep the plutonium for a few more years, et cetera. And it's just they're gonna try to keep this issue alive at the end of the day. And so we need not just Senator Cortez Masto, but the rest of our delegation to be just unified on this and make sure that we're not a nuclear waste dump.
This is kind of an offshoot of when you talk about Yucca Mountain, right? Something that has made leaders on both sides, but our folks on Capitol Hill, our governors, past couple of governors, very upset. You talk about the idea of Yucca Mountain. What do you make of the whole twist with plutonium, since we haven't really heard your take on that? Just the plutonium shipments, and then maybe now the fact that we got to try to get that out of here.
Well, let's first recognize the fact that where they're storing it, the area that we're talking about, we used to explode nuclear bombs out there. I mean, it's not like that property could be used for much of anything else other than that. My problem is with this knee-jerk reaction that Nevada politicians always have purely for political purposes. They keep saying they want the science to determine this, and yet the study of Yucca Mountain by scientists and experts, they're refusing to fund that study to determine whether or not it is suitable or not. I noticed that they in the press release, Senator Masto noted that people don't want it. They said Nevadans don't want it. But the people of Nevada, as Arnold Knightley, the public information officer in Nye County, mentioned, the people of Nevada have never been heard on this issue. I can't remember the last time a legitimate poll was done on this issue in the state of Nevada. This is just the politicians who are saying they don't want it. The people really haven't spoken on this issue at all. They constantly say, well, there's no benefits to getting this. But Senator Barrasso, who's put a bill in to revive the study, has said, let's take a look at what federal benefits might be given to Nevada for doing the nation this service, because it's got to go somewhere. And the last thing, Patrick, I'll mention is the argument against shipping waste here, in order to get other states on board with the opposition, we're saying how dangerous it is to ship across state lines. And yet Senator Masto is now saying this should be, the site selection should be based on whether or not the community says that it's okay. So if another facility in another state says, yeah, we want it, how does that negate the danger that they've been harping about shipping it across state lines? Or is the danger only if they ship it across state lines to Yucca Mountain? So there's a lot of hypocrisy on this. It's a lot of political grandstanding, and I don't think we've really gotten to the point yet where we're having a legitimate, objective conversation on Yucca Mountain.
I do want to get your thoughts on Chuck's point about the communities like in Pahrump and in Nye County, where they say, well, we want it. We had some tax dollar benefits that we got out of it. They had some payments. They had the jobs that they had touted. We've done stories with some of the scientists that had worked out there previously as well. Nye County and some of the rural counties have issued ordinances and declarations strongly in favor. So is this the big guy versus the little guy in the state? This has been the popular rallying point, a political point for senators and members of Congress and all that. But as Chuck had pointed out, as we've seen, the smaller counties say, well, we're not being heard.
Look, I think that, in years past, we've had people like Senator Dean Heller and other people on the other side that have been all unifying on the Yucca Mountain issue. However, at the local level, you do see the rural counties and folks from those rural counties saying that they do support it. I do agree that we need to make sure the voices of everybody is heard and that this discussion needs to be a little bit more objective so that we can figure out why it is that they are actually supporting it. And because at the end of the day, I remember when I was younger and moved here to Nevada, and I was figuring out what does this mean, and people from Reno were saying, well, it's not that bad, but people in Las Vegas were saying it's going to be terrible for us. I think that there is this divide between Las Vegas and the rest of the state about how safe this is, and they're saying up there it's totally safe, but folks in Las Vegas are saying the transportation through Las Vegas is dangerous. So it's something that needs to be handled objectively, and that honestly it needs to be the experts at the end of the day that figure this out. But I think there is some credence to the fact that in years past, Republicans, Democrats, across party lines at the state and federal level have unified on this, and there is a reason for that. It's because at the end of the day, we still need to figure out if this is safe or not, and we can't just, until we know that, just dump and transport through Nevada.
Just from the 30,000 foot level, a lot of people had said when Harry Reid left office that was kind of the last bit of political power that Nevada had on Capitol Hill. With some of the moves that Catherine Cortez Masto made trying to negotiate this deal, are there hopes that whether Republican or Democrat that we do maybe have a little bit of pull still left in Washington, maybe that we do have a chance to try to get some things our way?
Yeah, very little.
Very little. Okay.
Very little, and greatly diminished. I mean, obviously, Senator Reid, as a Senate Majority Leader, had an enormous amount of power to control this. But I have to agree with you. I mean, if you want the scientists and the experts to determine whether or not it's suitable, you have to fund the completion of the Yucca Mountain study. And that's what the Democrats have been holding up in the Senate. They don't want to fund the study. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either you want the science to dictate whether or not we should go forward with this, or you don't. And they're trying to have it both ways. So I think that the delegation, Democrats and Republicans, have been unified on this purely for political purposes, because they believe in their heart of hearts the only way they can get elected or get reelected is if they oppose Yucca Mountain. And I think you're starting to see some cracks in that. And I don't think that's going to last forever, especially if Senator Barrasso ever actually holds out, that apple and says, hey, what if we give you benefits like Alaskans got for the pipeline, the oil pipeline up there? If Nevadans had that to consider, I think you'd see a lot of public opinion change.
Let's talk about, we've had a couple of high-profile lawmakers step down just this year. We've seen several in the past couple of years, even arrests and charges, not just resigning, of course. Campaign finance reform, even though the legislature has particularly been hit hard, that's not something that has come up, and that's always something you would hear maybe in response when you start to hear this. Is this an issue that should be taken up by the legislature?
Totally, and I 100% agree that we need to make some drastic changes. I don't know if they'll happen drastically, but in 2017 there were a few minor bills that were presented, and I think you're going to see more this session and hopefully next session even more. Nevada has some of the worst and weakest campaign finance laws, and we need to do better. We need to do better by the donors and the people that support these candidates to ensure that there's actual measures and laws that can ensure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. And I think you're going to see some this session, hopefully. I think the legislators on all sides are starting to figure out this is something that needs to be addressed.
Would campaign finance laws, if they're more strict, would that still dissuade people from trying to break them?
Well, no, it won't never dissuade some people from trying to break them. They will always try to find a way to get around it. Here's the thing. Now, philosophically, I'm opposed to disclosing donors' names. I mean, we've seen in the past on certain campaigns and in certain issues where once a donor's name is disclosed, they're harassed, their businesses are boycotted. There is a true danger here I mean, the donation should be considered the same as a vote. I mean, it's in the privacy of the voting booth. But I am a realist. I know that's never going to happen. So the drastic change that should happen important. One, get rid of contribution limits, because that's what allows you to have, or causes companies like MGM to use 20 different corporate entities to give the maximum 10,000 so that they can give a big donation. They'll find a way. It was like Jurassic Park. Nature will find a way, right? So they'll find a way. What they ought to do is get rid of the campaign limits, however, require full disclosure of every contribution within 48 hours posted on the internet. So at least you've got transparency. It doesn't matter whether MGM gives $10,000 contributions or $100,000. Take that off the table, because all that does is hurt candidates who maybe can't self-fund, low-budget candidates who can't raise as much money. If they had a big donor who's saying, yes, I really do support you, as long as it's disclosed, the voters have the information they need to know, is this candidate owned by this donor or not, as long as it's disclosed. But it's got to be disclosed within a timely period, 48, 72 hours max, online, on the internet. None of this stuff where you wait until a week before the election and then it's finally disclosed, or after the election in a lot of cases.
Well, and what I hear from Chuck's proposal, I think there are things that you would agree with. There are probably things you wouldn't agree with as well, but it seems like there are some things you would agree with.
Oh, absolutely. I think we definitely need to have this in a timely manner. I mean, I know that, when we're trying to hold elected officials accountable on, who are they really voting for on the floor, we sometimes can't see their most recent contributions up to that point. We have to wait a little bit longer. And that's, for us, but also for constituents, just for regular people that want to go and see who it is that donated to their elected officials' campaign, needs to be done in a timely manner so that, you aren't seeing things after the election, right before the election, when you might have already voted for the person during early vote. It's something that, is really, it is, as a constituent and as a person that for my job I have to hold them accountable, it's frustrating to see that. And I think, unfortunately, the lessons that the legislature is learning is that people are paying attention on both sides of the aisle, and that you need to be more transparent, and hopefully they work to do so.
And as a campaign consultant, you know this just as well as anybody. It's not just the big companies that may want to push that $10,000 limit to give. You might have a candidate that has a family that wants to give, $25,000 or something and has the means to do it, but they're prohibited from doing so.
Yeah, and to follow up on your point about these donations that happen after the fact, I have personal knowledge of an example of this, perfect example, that just happened this last election cycle. There was a ballot initiative to ban brothels in Lyon County, Nevada. Okay, in order to give money to the PAC that was promoting this, you can't give more than $1,000 or your name is disclosed. But there's a loophole in the law. It says you can give $1,000 per reporting period, and there are 5 reporting periods, but 3 of them are before the election. And so we didn't find out that the sheriff in Lyon County had actually contributed to the effort to shut down the brothels that he regulates until 3 months after the election was already over. Now, fortunately, the voters of Lyon County shot it down 80 to 20%, but that is a huge loophole that you can hide a donor's identity. Someone like the sheriff of the county contributing to something that he has a direct influence on until after the election is already over. That could have gone the other way and could have cost a lot of people their jobs.
Let's talk about finally housing. Of course, we know Nevada was hit very hard through the last bubble and then recession. The Economic Forum was this week. They're predicting some sort of a downturn, not as severe as the recession, but later on, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, into 2021. Is that around the right time? End of 2020 into 2021. That being said, do you agree? Are we heading towards some sort of a bubble? We have seen prices going up for housing, as an example, quite steeply in the last 12, 18 months. Yeah,
absolutely we are. And I think this has been experienced even more by regular people up in Reno and in the northern Nevada area, where prices keep rising just on a month-by-month basis, sometimes on apartments, on not that incredible houses, and people are really being cut out of the market and having to move to different areas. So it's kind of slowly trickling down to other parts of the state, and we're feeling it in Las Vegas as well. And it's I know that there are a few bills and in the legislature now. I don't know if they go far enough. I'm not an expert on those bills, but it's something that also at the local level, I know that the Reno Sparks elected officials locally are trying to also figure out what is happening up in northern Nevada and try to fix that situation. So it looks like we're having to deal with that all over again.
Philosophically, how much should government get involved out ahead of something, to, price controls, rent controls, things like that? What is the appropriate level in your mind that the government should get involved?
Oh, just to stay out of it. I mean, government involvement
Exactly what I
no good
expected
can
you
come
to say.
from that. Look, as a homeowner, I'm happy to see housing prices going up. That's good for me. And the problem that we have is that Nevada is too popular. We've got too many people, especially coming from California, where they've all but destroyed that state. Housing prices are amazingly astronomical there. And so they're coming to Nevada, and unfortunately, a lot of them are coming here not as refugees, but as missionaries. And they want to bring all of their bad habits that ruin their state over into Nevada. But it's because of that influx. I mean, I think we're the second fastest growing community, I think I saw last week, maybe behind New Mexico or somewhere in Phoenix, maybe. But when you have that many people coming in, there's only a certain number of homes available. You can't build that quickly to accommodate it. So market means supply and demand. Supply is low, demand is high, the prices go up. So the worst thing that we can do is to have the government try to come in and fix that problem rather than letting the market take care of it, and the market will.
Do you see signs, trouble? Do you see trouble on the horizon? I mean, we're not economists, any of us, but just anecdotally speaking.
I took like one economy class, so I have no idea. But yeah, no, there is a problem, and I agree. It is, especially in northern Nevada, you have seen usually it was a southern California into Las Vegas. Now it's a northern problem, so it's statewide.
And the Bay Area
Yeah,
folks
Bay
going to
Area.
Reno.
I mean, you have people that are working for Tesla in dorms at UNR. So yeah, we weren't adequately prepared to bring folks on, to cut these deals with Tesla and stuff like that, bring folks on. And now this problem is not just down here, it's up there. And that is also trickling to rural parts because these folks are having to scramble and figure out, I mean, I know I don't want to live in a dorm. So, if that means that I have to figure out where to live nearby Reno, that's where I'm going to go. And so it's a problem that is turning into like epic proportions. And I think that the government should go in, but I agree that it's, the market is just wasn't ready for this.
If you decide to sell your house, Chuck, then there's maybe a nice dorm available. You can afford to purchase. I don't know.
I'll start renting out spare bedrooms.
There you go. Perfect.
Unless the kids start paying rent, they're out of here.
They're gone. They're getting the boot too. Well, I appreciate you both coming in. Thank you so much.
Thanks.